What's up, Liron here, and today we're going to talk about how to find your very own personal artistic style. What's up, Liron here. Thank you for joining me in another video, and today I want to talk to you about how you can create your own personal artistic style. Now, I just want to mention, I'm filming this a little later than usual, so no natural light. All you can see is artificial light, so hopefully you can still see me well. And another thing, I want you to stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to show you the huge painting I'm working on now. It's not my largest so far, but it is probably the most detailed painting I've ever done so far, so I think you're going to really enjoy it. It's just the initial wash now, but I think you'll love what you see and you'll get an update even before Instagram. Okay, I still haven't updated Instagram about this stage. So anyway, let's jump into today's topic, how to develop your own artistic style. This is something that I'll start by saying that every artist that you appreciate has their own style. It's very distinct. You can tell it's theirs. And the funny thing is, sometimes you're the last person to recognize your own style. Only about a year ago, people started commenting that they can tell my paintings apart from others, and I still wasn't able to, but we're gonna get to that. So this is a question that is on the mind of many aspiring artists because they know on some level that having that distinct, authentic, unique look to their work is important, is meaningful. And when you just get started, you may not have that and you may feel like a copycat of someone else. You may not, who knows. I don't feel like I ever was really a copycat. I always had my own lane. And in this video, I want to share two main tips for how to find your own personal style. So the first thing I would say is, first off, don't assume you don't have your own style. My approach is this: style isn't something you have to search for actively. It's more about doing the right things, and with the time, it will magically show up. Okay, this is really important to understand because I don't want people to obsess over it. And I see a lot of people that are frustrated or maybe they don't feel like they have it in them. But the thing is, really, this is something that just happens naturally. It will happen. You will develop your own way of doing things whether you want to or not. That's the funny thing. And it's going to be very nuanced at times. It may be the way you use your brush or the specific colors you choose and how you treat the edges if we're talking about watercolor or any painting medium. These are all things that will be taken into consideration automatically when you paint in your own style without even noticing it. So let's talk about the two ways that I see are the best to sort of develop your own style over time. The first one, and these have to be done together, okay? In order to work, you have to do both. So the first thing is working on the fundamentals and the basics. So if we're talking about painting, there are some different fundamentals that are relevant to every single genre, let's say, or every medium. So if we look at watercolor, oil, gouache, acrylic, some things are relevant to all, and that is let's say the basic technique of controlling the paint, composition, color harmony, all of these different elements that are the basics of art, how you arrange the different elements in the scene, being able to match the value or color that you see. These are all things that no matter what medium you use, it's relevant to know. So the first thing would be to continuously work on the fundamentals. Because the fundamentals are, it's funny, it's like a magic trick. The fundamentals seem to be sometimes the most boring thing, but in fact, it's what makes your art good. Like if I look at my most successful paintings, the thing that makes them look good isn't necessarily the small details or things of that nature. It's more about the larger shapes. It's more about the main areas of the painting and how they're working as a composition without even regarding the details, which is why, and I said this in my Jasmine Wang Painting Masters episode, the painting has to work compositionally before you even add the details in. It has to be interesting. And of course, there's a caveat: composition doesn't have really rules that are set in stone. There are a lot of things to change, but the basics of good design and composition are noticeable. So the first thing I would say is work on the basics. Now you have to mix that with something else, and that will be adding some new things and some changes, and that would be experimenting. So you have to experiment with new things that scare you. Now it could be new things that scare you in the meaning of you still haven't tried, or it could be things that scare you because they're not your style. And I actually love to do these things. They're like, for example, you try and paint in a completely different genre. So I do mostly impressionistic, but I did a few paintings in which I tried to be photorealistic. Like I actually went for it and tried for it to be photorealistic. I wanted it to be almost indistinguishable from a photo. I think like I aimed here and I got here when I'm usually here. So that's fine. I'm happy with the result. It's a sunny building and I showed it to you once here. And it really looks like a photo if you take a few steps back. It looks like a photo. I did that not necessarily because I want my style to be that way, but because I want to experiment with that and incorporate what I need into my style. Because what happens is, even if you do something you hate or that's not a part of your usual routine, it doesn't necessarily mean it will change your style, but it will be incorporated in it. Let me give you another example. So I never really did too much abstract work, but I do plan on doing that because I understand that if I do enough of it, some elements of it will be naturally incorporated and will help my impressionistic work, because impressionism is all about seeing the abstract shapes. So maybe working abstractly for a few paintings will help me recognize these abstract shapes, and maybe I'll figure out a way. For example, you want to paint a person. You can figure out a very efficient way of painting something that looks like a person, but in fact, if you look up close, it's not. And maybe painting abstractly will help you with that. Okay, so that's a point that's worth understanding. So it doesn't mean you change your style completely, but it means you try something that's very different from what you do. Another example could be use paints that, like specific colors you're not used to using. I'll give you another example. Use a different medium altogether. Like try, if you work with watercolor like me, try out gouache for a day. See what happens. You know, you will learn this. Learning something completely new automatically expands your spectrum of expertise, let's say. If you're just doing small changes and you're trying small things, your area of comfort will grow very, very slowly. But if you try something that's completely out there, you immediately add all of that into your abilities. I hope that makes sense. Now, these two have to work together. On the one hand, you don't want the routine and the basics to become all, because then you lose your creative edge and all you do is just exercises and you do maybe studies of other people's work, but you don't hone your own creativity. So you don't want to go fully that way, but you also don't want to go fully experimental and lose your skills on the way, or maybe become a little rusty, because that happens. You know, it's easy to get back to, but it can happen. You can get a little rusty, so I don't recommend either of those extremes, but trying to do both. And the funny thing is, I try and do both extremes to the extreme, but alternate between them, okay? So I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers some people's question of how to find your own artistic style. It's a topic I talked about several times before. I'm gonna link down below my podcast episode if you want to hear me talk about this, maybe in more detail, or maybe from a bit of a different take. I recorded it a few weeks ago, so you know, things change, perspectives change on a daily basis. I learn new things. So if I talk about the same topic in a year from now, I'll probably say things are a little different yet again. So I hope you enjoyed this one. And now, as I promised, I'm going to show you the painting I'm working on. So let's get going here. Okay, so here's what I've got so far, and hopefully you can see it well. Sorry again about the light, maybe a little off. So this is the first wash, and it's a very big junction. It's the connection between two streets. One is Allenby and the other one is King George. It's a very large junction, and there are a couple of interesting things here. This area is an entrance to the market, Shuka Carmel. If you've ever visited Israel, you probably know what I'm talking about. There is this, I don't even remember what that is. It may be a restaurant. I decided to turn it into a restaurant, as you can see here. And I think that works really well. People crossing the street. There are just a few benches here with people sitting down. There are some bicycles, bikes, motorcycles, and then the beautiful buildings here. The windows actually have these beautiful turquoise, you know, the things, the blinds. It's really beautiful. I'm gonna do a lot of negative painting around all of these tiny people in the background here as well. I'm gonna make these pop. I also did a prep sketch of these few people. Let me show you. Okay, so check it out. These are the same three people that you just saw. I also did a few sketches of the entire scene, generally speaking, just so that I can figure out the composition and stuff like that, make sure that I have it I always do like a few full sketches and then I focus on some areas of the scene. So again, this is the people that you see right here because they're a main part of the scene. So I wanted to really make sure that I put in the work to represent them fully. Now notice how I had a bit of backgrounds here. This area was wet for too long and then it went over here. That's fine. It's not going to be noticeable at all because once we add the additional layers, the darks are going to take over. All of this building will be in the shadow all the way to here, and there's going to be a massive shadow in the foreground here. Some other things I noticed is not to connect this with the corner, but go a little above it to not ruin the sense of how the scene invites you in. Also, there are going to be some directional lines here probably. In these zebra cross stripes take you into, I never remember how to call these, take you into the scene, and I think it's going to work really, really nicely. So anyway, with that being said, let's wrap it up. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe if you still haven't. I have a lot of videos like this one where I just talk about art, creativity, motivation, all sorts of things of how to find your way in the art world, also the business of art, and also tons of videos of me showing paintings and works in progress, and mostly actually showing the processes. So feel free to subscribe if that's something that interests you. I want to thank you so much, and I will see you again in another vid real soon.